I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar, and particularly our people out there who are taking time this afternoon to join us. I'm Frank Anechiarico. I'm in the government department at Hamilton College, and also serve as faculty director of the Levitt Center for Public Affairs, which is sponsoring this panel discussion on the potential of a Human Rights Commission in Oneida County. The Levitt Center is organizing this event in cooperation with the College Community Partnership for Racial Justice. I should also mention the web address of the College Community Partnership, on which people can find information about this effort and the police reform effort that preceded it. That is community4justice.org, community4justice.org. Well, let me introduce you to our distinguished panelists. First, and if you wouldn't mind raising your hand to identify yourself, although I think your name is there in your box. Julia Day, who is a regional director of the New York State Division of Human Rights for the Rochester, Syracuse region. That's our region. Montanette Murphy, executive director of Human Rights for Onondaga County. And JoAnne Myers, associate professor of political science at Marist College and a member of the Ulster County Human Rights Commission. I also want to mention Cole Cusack, a senior at Hamilton, who did very important background research on the Human Rights Commission structure in New York State that led up to the discussion today. Cole would be moderating this panel if he weren't studying abroad, so we can't be too sad for him. I also like to thank my Levitt Center colleagues, Zach Schuman and Chris Williamson. So what's the reason for this panel? Let me give you a brief introduction. I think in general, there are three reasons. First is the lack of generally available information locally in this part of New York State about human rights and protections under New York State anti-discrimination law. There is no institution equivalent to a Human Rights Commission at the moment in this region. Second is the need for advice and assistance in directing complaints about rights violations regarding the protected categories under New York State law, which include religion, race, ethnicity, and national origin, gender, sexual and gender orientation, age, marital status, disability, and military service, regarding education, housing, employment, and possible prejudicial actions by public and private actors in other fields of endeavor. Third, the lack of an independent citizen oversight and complaint processing agency for a number of public services in this area, including criminal justice institutions. Just briefly, I would mention the preceding effort, which I alluded to a moment ago, regarding police reform. As many of you know, in June of 2020, the governor issued an executive order requiring all jurisdictions operating public safety agencies to produce reform plans that included efforts to deal with racial justice. We responded to that at the Levitt Center by reading all of those that came from our area and rating them. One of the things we found to be deficient in a lot of the plans was any provision for independent oversight by citizens of these agencies. The question that we will want to raise here, among others, is the degree to which a Human Rights Commission might serve some of those functions. So that's, I think, a broad introduction to why we're doing this. It says obviously an initial effort, but education is the first step, and information is the way we're going to do that. So I'd like to start with Julia Day, please, and who's the regional director of the State Human Rights Division I introduced a moment ago. And let me start, Julia, by asking you to give us some idea of the range of activities that human rights commissions engage in around the state. And I know you're primarily familiar with our central New York region, but perhaps you can enlighten us about that.
Well, for what the commissions do, there's a very wide variety because they're, as you know, they're established independently. Some are established by cities or even villages. Some are established by counties. And each time there's an enabling legislation And it says each one is different from the next. There are some that are focused on, as you indicated, police oversight. Others are focused on racial discrimination. Some are more involved with advocacy. Some work on building accessibility for persons with disabilities. Some serve as sort of a liaison to try to prevent conflicts and resolve conflicts in the community. There isn't a specific statute that says what a local commission should and shouldn't do. That really is pretty much up to the local lawmakers to decide what they want their commission to engage in.
Yeah, well, that very much leads to my next question, which is how these get organized to begin with. And you made a reference a couple of times to enabling legislation. What do you mean by that? What legislation? Who passes that? What does it have to say?
Well, I have to put a disclaimer to, I can speak a lot about what the State Division of Human Rights does. In terms of how the commissions operate, I'm not familiar and involved with the inner workings. In other words, the state agency does not get involved when localities decide to start a commission. But usually it's like a city council might pass an ordinance, or a county legislature would pass legislation that creates the local commission and creates its missions, its parameters and so forth.
So that enabling legislation would indicate what kinds of activities it engages in and what kinds of complaints that it might forward to you?
If indeed it forwards complaints to us at all. Certainly some local commissions do that, do forward complaints to the division, again, based on what their mission happens to be. But there are others that just don't engage in that activity.
So a commission might just be informational, right? Might just be educative.
Yes, or it could be focused on issues that the Division of Human Rights does not address. For example, police departments, very good example. We have no authority over police departments except in their hiring and firing of staff. Or occasionally, say if they present an event to the public, let's see if they have an informational session for the public or a barbecue to which the community is invited, we would have jurisdiction over that and over whether their building is accessible. But in terms of, if they're behaving improperly in carrying out law enforcement, that's not something that the New York State Division of Human Rights is empowered to address.
That would have to be something that would be established locally.
Right.
Local law. Well, perhaps you can walk us through the complaint process when you do receive a complaint. And I outlined some of the areas in which complaints might come to you. If you're in one of those protected categories and you find yourself discriminated against in employment or education, what would you do? How do people contact you?
Well, first I'll say that we cover employment, housing, credit, public accommodations, education, and volunteer firefighters. Those are the jurisdictional areas. And employment also includes interns, it includes domestic employment, and it does not include general volunteer work, but it does include internships. And a lot of people now contact us through the website. We have an active website that has all of our complaint filing information available. We just inaugurated a digital complaint filing process. So there are a number of ways a person can file a complaint using the website. They can actually log into an interview. They answer the questions as it goes along. And then at the end, a complaint form is generated and sent to us automatically. Another way is they can get a complaint form online and fill it out online and email or send it to us, or they can print it and fill it out by hand if that's easier, and then email or send it to us. And then some people, come to the office and get a complaint form there and fill it and take care of it that way. Some people make or call us on the phone and we tell them what needs to be done and make their necessary documents and so on available. Some do it through attorneys or legal service agencies that draft the complaint and submit it for them. So there are lots of different ways.
I see. So if people wanted to find that website, how would they find that?
Well, I can give the address. It's very simple, www.dhr for Division of Human Rights.ny.gov, or if anybody doesn't want, Google's New York State Division of Human Rights, it should come right up.
Great, thank you very much. So, so once that process starts, so someone actually gets online, walks through it, perhaps with you or another organization helps them, then what do you do with it?
Well, for the complaints that come for the Rochester Syracuse region, it may vary a little bit from regional office to regional office. The way we do it here is I review each complaint that comes in, make sure that it's something jurisdictional. If it's incomplete, then we notify the parties of what they need to do to make it complete. If, for example, there's an electronic signature portion, if that's not there, or if, crucial information is missing and so on. If it's not jurisdictional, we dismiss it for lack of jurisdiction, but most complaints are complete and jurisdictional, most of what we receive. So I then, what happens next is it gets entered into our computer system and the complaint is served on the other party. So let's say it's against an employer, we provide a copy of the complaint to the employer and tell them what we need from them in terms of a response to the complaint. At the same time, we notify the complainant so that the complainant knows that we have their complaint and we're proceeding with it. Once we, yes, did you want me to continue?
No, please go ahead. That's right. No, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Once we receive the respondent's response, then most of the time we send a copy of that to the complainant and we ask them to submit a rebuttal. So at that point, we have the complainant's initial statement, we have the respondent's side of the story, and then we have the complainant's reaction to the respondent's side of the story. At that point, I review the case again and I assign it to one of the investigators on staff. And then the investigators will follow up with whatever they feel is necessary to meet our requirements. A lot of times we get the parties together for a fact-finding conference, done virtually now. We may interview the parties separately. We may talk to witnesses. We review and analyze documents, look for comparative data. There can be, a lot of different ways. Then and then after that, the investigator submits a recommendation to the supervisor, analyzing the case and recommending what action we should take. And then the supervisor submits it to me and I make the ruling. The ruling is whether there's what we call probable cause or no probable cause. If I feel that the evidence is not sufficient to support the charge, I dismiss the complaint and the person has the right to appeal that decision. If I feel that there is substantial evidence to support the charge, I issue a finding of probable cause. And then it moves on to the next step at the Division of Human Rights outside of my office, which is what's called sometimes post-regional, where it's calendared for a formal hearing in front of an administrative law judge. And then after the judge hears the case and makes a recommended ruling, the commissioner issues a final order. And the commissioner has the same authority as a court does. The commissioner can order lost wages, compensatory damages, cease and desist, job offer, punitive damages, civil fines and penalties. The Division of Human Rights has that authority, for all of that. And then any step along the way, if the parties are interested, the case can be resolved. So there are procedures for a resolution that would stop the process at the point of resolution.
I see. So that latter stage that's done in Albany. That's at the commission headquarters, the divisional headquarters.
Well, first of all, believe it or not, our headquarters is not in Albany. It never has been. I'm not sure why, the history of that, but the head of our headquarters is in Bronx.
Oh, in the Bronx. Okay.
Yeah, it's downstate.
But, so the commissioner, this is a appointed commissioner.
Right, a commissioner appointed by the governor. Right. So the commissioner and the central office staff are all in the Bronx. We do have a regional office in Albany, but it's a regional office just like the Rochester office is a regional office. But the judges are scattered around the state. So there are judges in the Syracuse office, there are judges in the Buffalo office. But yes, the final ruling would come from the commissioner who's at headquarters.
Can you give us a sense of how many of these you're dealing with in a given year?
Over 1,000 for the Rochester Syracuse regional office. Now, we are, as far as I know, the busiest office in the state.
Really?
Yes, in terms of the volume that we handle. But yeah, that's what we handle in a given year is over 1,000.
And just to go back to this, the earlier question about the local human rights commissions, is there some idea about how many of those are routed by commissions?
Well, for my office, there are very few. We only have 3 commissions within our 17-county region.
Okay.
And at this point, that has changed from time to time. At this point, none of those commissions, as their mission, routinely refer complaints to us. Again, there have been times when commissions did, because I've been around a long time, 44 years. But so there have been times when we've had more commissions, and there have been times when commissions refer cases to us, and there are other commissions statewide that do refer cases to the Division of Human Rights routinely. It's just not something that's happening routinely in our region.
I see. It sounds like this, what would be the average amount of time it would take to get to a resolution at the level of the commissioner?
Well, that's of course that got slowed down with the pandemic. The regional process, the investigation process up to a ruling of probable cause or no probable cause, that takes up to 180 days. So it's not like these things that drag on for years in terms of of receiving that decision in the case as to whether or not we feel it has merit. But I think the goal for the public hearing level would be that there would be a ruling within 18 months of when the complaint is filed. But especially after the pandemic, when things got behind, it would be more like a couple of years now.
And perhaps what percentage or proportion are being settled before it gets even to the level of hearing?
Well, I would say if the cases before a ruling is made, I would say probably only about maybe 15% at this point.
Really? So people are going the distance.
Right. But then after a finding of probable cause, it would be more like 70%.
I'm sorry, you froze up just as you were saying the percentage number.
This is just kind of a rough guess from what I see. This is
sorry, what was that percentage again? I'm sorry again.
It was I would estimate it's probably more like 65 or 70%.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Of the cases that are found probable cause are resolved before the commissioner issues a ruling.
Okay, I see. And what is the cost to the complainant?
No cost except incidentals, whatever they might need, if they need to want to pay for photocopies or, transportation when things happen in person, but there's no filing or anything of that nature.
Okay, this is really useful. Okay, I think we'll want to come back to a number of these issues in a few minutes, but thank you very much, Julia. I think you've given us the lay of the land. So thank you. Let me turn now, if I may, to Montanette Murphy, from the Human Rights Office in the Onondaga County government. Hi there, Montanette.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Good to see you. Well, let me first ask you how your Human Rights Office is organized within the government of Onondaga County, because it's not freestanding as I understand it. It's within the government, is that right?
That is correct. So the Onondaga County Human Rights Commission actually is the Onondaga County Syracuse Human Rights Commission, and it falls under the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. And so in a sense, it sort of stands alone. It can decide to have conversations about very important issues in the community without having any type of blowback from politicians, so they can have a voice, or they can speak out about those issues that are pretty important and salient in our community. But the Human Rights Commission falls under the Office of Diversity and Inclusion.
So you're the executive director. Now, is there a board of commissioners, as there I think is in Ulster County, which has the difference? Ulster County, says I understand it, and I don't want to steal JoAnne's thunder, but it's a commission that is not within a government, but yours being inside Oneida County government, Onondaga County government, in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, does it have a set of commissioners?
It does. We have, we have 24 commissioners. We're supposed to have 24 commissioners. Currently, we have 13. Those commissioners, the commissioners who want to join the Human Rights Commission must be vetted, and they also must fill out an application to join the commission. And their names, resumes, go before the Onondaga County legislators. So they are appointed by they're voted on by the Onondaga County legislators.
Okay, so these are volunteers by and large.
Yes, they are not paid.
Right. Now, you're a part of a paid staff. Are there other paid staff on the?
Yes, there is. So I'm one of the paid staff, and then we have a human rights specialist. She's the other paid staff. And then, of course, we have a chief diversity officer. So we're a team that works together to address and answer and really work with the human rights commissioners in Onondaga County in Syracuse, the city of Syracuse.
And I gather that it's not a new office. It's been in place for a while, hasn't it?
Well, it has. So the first commission started back in 1963, and I'd like to think that there was a montage, a cultural montage, if you will, of things that happened in the city of Syracuse that prompted certain individuals within the community to ask for a human rights commission. So from 1963 up until now, we've had a human rights commission that was at one time established and then defunded, and then it was stood up again and then taken down again. The most recent time that the Human Rights Commission was stood up was in 2015. Before that, it was in 2010. So it was defunded prior to 2010, and then it was stood up again and then closed, and now we're here and have been open for a few years now.
Okay, that's very interesting. So perhaps you could walk us through the powers that your commission has, or the activities it engages in. I guess maybe the place to start would be with what I was just discussing with Julia Day, the complaint processing.
So what happens with our commission is they've determined that they want to be community oriented. We are in the community. We are at the huge events that happen in and throughout and around Syracuse and Onondaga County. The commission has subcommittees. There's an advocacy committee, there is an outreach committee, and there's also a policing committee or a police committee. And so those groups meet frequently or often to discuss issues that are, impactful in our community, issues that are important, issues that people are talking about. And we go into the community, we have public hearings, we have public sessions where we invite the experts and then community members who bear the brunt of some of these issues that take place in our community. And we get them together and have conversation about how to make things better. What's the next best step in some of these situations facing our community? So that's first and foremost what we do. But when we get a call from a community member who feels as if he or she has been discriminated against because of his race or because of her gender, what we do, our staff are trained to give them the information they need about the New York State human rights law. And then we do send them Julia's way, or we give them the information for the New York State Division of Human Rights. We emphasize to our callers, the community members, that our Human Rights Commission is not a regulatory agency. We cannot compel companies and businesses and entities to follow or adhere to the New York State human rights law, but that the New York State Division of Human Rights has a little bit more authority to do that.
Yeah, Montanette, I'm very interested in the public hearings that you hold. I guess these are consequent to something that's happening in the community. Can you give us an example of a couple that have happened recently where you've felt that you've actually put one of these hearings in place, held one?
Sure, absolutely. We had one last year on I-81, and one of our commissioners is Lanessa Chaplin, and she is the project counsel for the New York Civil Liberties Union, and she's very active. And so we had all of the needed folks who are involved with 81, and we had a conversation around the impact of I-81. It was about, I think the hearing was for 2 hours, and it was well attended, and it was one that we wanted to continue, but we didn't. But it was a great, well attended meeting in 2021. That's one of the hearings that we had. And then in 2020, we had a hearing that centered on COVID-19, the impact of it, and how people were dealing with it. We used the broad umbrella of COVID-19, but some of the underlinings of it were healthcare disparities, mental health, community members who felt the county or city governments could have done more to perhaps have the libraries be a little bit more open and accessible to people who needed it. So it was a very broad conversation about how COVID-19 had affected our area. And so those are two that come to mind. This year, we have not held one yet, but we are in the process of planning a public hearing. Commissioners are in the process of planning a public hearing.
What will that be about? Do you have an idea yet?
So among some of the things that they may choose to discuss, it'll be I-81, probably COVID. We've seen a spike in crime in our area, youth violence. It can be anything that is pressing and anything that's just on the hearts of many of the people in our community. That's what commissioners seek to do. They seek to tap the pulse of the community. What is everyone talking about? It can be homelessness. Our commissioners are very embedded in the community, and often they come to the table, they come to that Human Rights Commission table with a lot of ideas and suggestions on what could be a good subject to talk about. So nothing has been narrowed down yet, but I know that there was one commissioner who wanted to address more shelters for teenagers who are fleeing domestic violence situations. That was one topic that came up. I-81 is another. Mm-hmm. And policing, reimagining policing, has it worked? And, how has it worked? So those kind of conversations are some of the issues that are on the radar for the Human Rights Commission.
Now, would you invite key policymakers to these hearings as well, or is it really just for the public and the commissioners?
We do invite key policymakers, those individuals who are large stakeholders, people who can make decisions about some of these issues that are happening in our community. So it's always, I refer to them as experts, but yeah, definitely folks who have the ability to bring about some change and who can really speak earnestly about what's happening in our community. So it would be those particular key holders and commissioners, as well as community members.
So maybe we can turn to the subcommittee structure, which is very interesting. And the one, of course, that popped out to me, and you just mentioned it a moment ago, is this policing committee that you have. Is it focused particularly on the Onondaga Sheriff and the Syracuse Police Department, or is it more broadly criminal justice?
More broadly criminal justice. So because we're Onondaga County, we even include the towns and villages. And in 2020, when we had remnants from a previous commission, we had a couple of commissioners speak with all of the law enforcement from within Onondaga County, including Syracuse, Camillus, Malleus, Liverpool. So we brought them all to the table and just had conversations about those issues we wanted to talk about and those issues that were important to our community.
So was that sort of around the police reform effort as well? That was part of this, or? Police
reform effort, and then also any types of complaints or concerns that we've heard from community members about a particular department. It's always our intent to be forward thinking and to move forward from situations or matters or incidences that happen. So it's a little bit of everything. It's anything and all things. But so most times we will get complaints from community members who might want to talk about a scenario that may have happened in Liverpool. So our commissioners, or the commission, serves as a bridge between the community and law enforcement, or at least tries to. We try to.
So there'll be follow-up after these hearings with public officials with regard to what you heard from the public.
Sure, of course. So yeah, we'll have commissioners who will connect with the law enforcement, and then that's information we can bring back to the table, to the general table, or bring back to the community. If we don't decide to have a public hearing, you could have a public hearing where we have all of the law enforcement agencies attend, or those that can and are willing, and have that conversations with community members. And what we found is that law enforcement is very active. They want to be part of the talks. They want to be involved in the conversations. And that's part of what that committee does. You have a good deal,
it sounds like you have a good deal of legitimacy with these people, that they're willing to come to these meetings and listen and perhaps be criticized.
Well, I think the legitimacy is more in the hands of the community. I think these law enforcement agencies, they want to get to the people, and we're sort of that conduit, to help do that. But I don't know that it's just us. I think it's the community. I think a lot of what has happened in our country, in the nation, has sort of dictated the movement of how law enforcement and the community sort of come together and have conversation. And so most often the law enforcement entities are happy to talk and speak and have conversation about how things can be done better. And then they can also inform community members about how things are going and what they're doing. It's a two-way street where community members get to learn and hear how it is for them, and then law enforcement gets to hear what it's like from the community member.
That's very interesting. We have a few more minutes we can spend on what you guys are doing. Maybe you can tell us more about your outreach.
So our outreach is getting into the community. We have one of our commissioners who founded We Rise Above the Streets. His name is Alamin Muhammad. And every Saturday, he hosts a sandwich Saturday. And many commissioners will gather along with him and hand out sandwiches to the homeless individuals, socks, clothes, jackets. Twice a year, Alamin has a barbecue. It's in May and September. And so our commissioners are there. So we have a table there, and we let the community know that we're here. Here are our subcommittees. It's an opportunity to let Onondaga County and the city of Syracuse know we're here. We can help you. If any need that you have falls outside of our purview, we know where to send you. We can connect you with the right people so that you can get some type of justice. And that's important to us. That outreach is important. So that's one part of outreach. And the other part of outreach is making sure that our community knows about different types of agencies of help that are available. It's getting the word out, not so much about the Human Rights Commission, but about other entities, mental health agencies, hospitals, information for our deaf community. So it's that kind of outreach to let folks know this is what's available in Onondaga County.
How do you do that? Do you use social media, or how do you get that word out?
So usually it's during the summertime when we have events where we can have a table. We also do it with our public hearings. We also, we don't have a social media platform. We're not on Twitter. We don't have a Facebook page. That's something that's in the works. But we do have our website. We're online. So all of the information that we want to get out, we use our website. The Human Rights Commission has a web page. So that's our primary vehicle to get information to community members.
Well, that's really inspiring, Montanette. Thank you very much for laying that out for us. I appreciate it. That's great. Well, let me turn now to JoAnne, who's working in a different part of New York State, Ulster County. And perhaps you can start, JoAnne, by telling us how your Human Rights Commission is organized, which is, I think, different from Onondaga County.
Yeah, so actually our Human Rights Commission, we started in the early 90s with a petition from local activists and got the county legislature to pass enabling legislation. in which the majority leader, the minority leader, and the county exec all appoint people. The county exec also in the county office had a part-time paid commissioner. And we've have over the course of the past basically 30 years moved from a part-time paid commissioner to a full-time commissioner with a bilingual assistant. So we have that in place, and our commission has, we basically think that our purpose is to educate the public. So we actually put forward a series of conferences for a couple of years on restorative justice in the school system, and invited all of the different school boards and principals into it, so they could, so we could basically try to interrupt the school to prison pipeline. And we have the major school districts have started to adopt restorative justice circles as a way of dealing with that. We also see our position as one to mediate between people who are having issues. And I guess 3 years ago, someone brought to our attention that one of the towns, Little League, was named after the, I guess Little Leagues get named after ball, big ball teams. And this one was named the Cohonson Indians, but they had as their mascot Chief Wahoo. And that offended some people. We brought in both sides. We mediated between them, and they have now changed their all the embleming and etc. And we actually made the Fortune magazine on this type of change. So that, but we also look at our position is to educate. So for instance, when COVID was hitting, we made sure that we were working with the county exec and all the different towns to make sure that masks were being distributed, that information was being distributed, not just in a central place, but in those communities that might not have access to that. And right now, the big issue in our area is that the Central Hudson, our major utility, just the bills that came in this were double, triple what people had been paying. So we reached out to our state senator and the county exec are all working together to try to mitigate that. So we do that type of education. We also have complaints that come to us. And then we
talking about with complaints under New York State.
Yeah. So somebody might have an issue because they didn't get service for public accommodations, or in fact, we have had, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, we had somebody was denied access to the right for them locker room in a health club. Someone else was denied a haircut in a barber shop. So we actually then looked at our law, our enabling legislation, and revamped it. And at that point, we also made sure that it was coterminous with, the municipal laws that it needed to be, and also with the state. So we keep on making ourselves bigger and better, so to speak.
That's very interesting. So when you get a complaint, when you got those complaints, I guess what I'm hearing you say is that you're dealing with them locally rather than sending them to regional office of the Division of Human Rights.
Yeah, so we feel that if we can mediate, because we're all neighbors and we want to be a welcoming county, like how do we mediate before we escalate, basically? And in our new enabling legislation, our amendments allows us to have a public hearing officer so that we can, and so if someone needs to get some monetary redress, they can do that locally, but it's a smaller amount than if they went up to the Albany regional office. And they can get more. So they have to make up their minds, we'll help them, walk through the steps.
Well, so I guess maybe similar to what I was asking Julia earlier, sort of what percentage end up going all the way, wanting to go to Albany to the regional office, or stay right there with you and have it adjudicated locally?
So that's why most of the cases that have come to us, we have tried to mediate locally. There's only a few cases that I know of in this past year that have gone up to Albany.
Mm-hmm. And so in some cases you settle it without a hearing.
Yeah, with just mediating between, we hear both sides, and we'll go out. We'll do sometimes Ty Wilson, who's the paid commissioner, will go out with one of us, and we will do a restorative justice circle at the site. We did that with the YMCA as a summer camp, and we did that with them because they were treating one of the children incorrectly. So we mediated and got them up to speed.
Now, how did you all get trained in restorative justice? How did that come through to, because I gather that's something that needs some.
We actually have been trained in so as new commissioners come on, we do more training. We keep on doing more and more training on how basically how to listen. I think most of restorative justice is listening to each other. And so we do probably every year we'll have someone come in and facilitate a restorative justice within our own commission, so we know what's happening and give us more tips.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's the volume of activity that you have in a given month or year with issues that you're dealing with, either in the school districts or other issues?
I'm sorry, I did not ask that of Ty. We were just actually working on his yearly annual report that is due, and I think we probably get somewhere about 50 minimum 50 cases will come to us, whether at some point. And so I would say that every month we have some like we had big housing issues in the county because a lot of New Yorkers, meaning New York Cityites, have been moving up to the county, and a big developer basically bought up all the apartment complexes in the area and started jacking up the rents and cutting services. So we've been dealing with that around the county.
How would you approach a question like that if you're meeting with the developer?
So some of it is meeting with the developer and the residents and trying to mediate. They can't cut the services, right? And the other piece of it is maybe we need to advocate for better housing tenant laws. So I know that in the city of Kingston, they were looking at, do they go and do rent control or rent regulation, but they don't have the right number. You have to have a certain percentage of vacancies, and
right.
we didn't have that when they did the survey. But I know that rents have just gone through the roof, and we don't have the jobs basically to support the rents, but we have a lot of people who have moved up, and so Kingston itself has been has the title of Little Brooklyn basically, or Williamsburg.
It sounds like similar to Onondaga. It's the commissioners who might drive some of these issues that they'll see things going on and decide to take some action.
Yeah.
How do you do outreach so that you're covering sort of a broader range of issues that people may have, but you may not know about.
Yeah, so we actually are, Ty will meet with the other directors of different human rights commissions in the greater Hudson Valley area, so Dutchess County, Orange County, and they'll share ideas. But about 5 years ago, so Dutchess County was also one of those, I like Montanette's, open and closed human rights commission. It was open, it was closed, they just opened it a couple of years back. But what Dutchess County was doing, and we're going to borrow their idea, they were going around from town to town having coffee clutches where they bring in, again, this is pre-COVID, they'll bring, they bring in, some refreshments, and they just invite the community to come and talk about ideas. And we were just about to ramp up to start that when COVID hit.
Right.
So, but we do go to all, public events that we have. We were just at all the Black History events and the Women's History events. So we make sure that we're out there in the public.
And how do you present yourselves at events like this?
Sometimes we have a banner, and if we can table, we can table. All of us have little, county cards, that we hand out. So people know us. In fact, I just got a call about, housing weatherization. Where do they go? So I just act as a conduit. I look up the information and pass it on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the staff is basically 2 people full-time, is that right?
Actually, the assistant is part-time right now. We're trying to get her to be full-time.
And then I think when we had our brief discussion last week, you mentioned the possibility of bringing in a law judge, an administrative law judge.
Yeah, so we in the revamped legislation, we have an area to have a public hearing officer.
Okay.
And so that would be the administrative hearing judge. That hasn't actually, we haven't had the need yet. And the county is, trying to figure out how, who they have I guess a stable of retired lawyers that could act in this capacity. And they just need to make sure that they have funding for that if we should need it. But I know other county entities also have a need for a public hearing officer.
Right. Have you broached public safety generally and criminal justice? Does that come into your
purview? So actually, when I first got on the commission, this is basically the end of my second term, but because of the new legislation, I got extended. I found out that the Sheriff's Department at that point, when they stopped anyone, instead of asking them if they were citizens, would ask them where they were born. And so we called in the sheriff and said, why are you asking this? And his comment was, well, the people know where they were born. I said, people could be born anywhere and still be American citizens, right? It's not just that we have birthright citizenship. So we actually had to, have him go think this all the way through. We walked him through the steps so that his officers were not, basically holding people for INS.
Right.
So we did that when the former governor, asked to have these police reform committees. We sat, members of our commission also sat on them, either locally within the towns and then there was a county one. And from that, we have gotten social workers to ride alongside some of the officers. We've also done a gun buyback here in the city of Kingston. And I use city, it is a city, but it's
the city.
Small.
Yeah, but I guess, I opened by talking about the lack of independent citizen oversight of police in a lot of parts of the state. And it seemed to me that that was one of the things that it's kind of the gold star of the, I think, hopes people had for police reform, that there would be some independent review. You don't serve that function in any particular.
No, we don't, but I know that on this, at the city level, there is a police oversight committee.
In Kingston. Okay,
Yes.
I see. Okay, so maybe I wonder, maybe what if you have two paid officials? I'm sorry, yes, two paid staff members. Do you also allocate funds for outreach? Is there like a budget for that kind of thing?
We have a very small budget. We keep on trying to expand it. That will allow us to do, for instance, to get our banner. So that, for instance, there was just a march from the Sojourner Truth Memorial to the county courthouse, because Sojourner Truth was a resident of Ulster County.
Right, that's right.
So we have a banner for that, and we bring that out. We have monies to print flyers and brochures. And the state department also has wonderful brochures that we also give out.
You mentioned sort of doing some mediation in the schools. Do you have a regular connection with the school districts?
Yeah, so we were doing, we had been doing this educational conference, and so we actually had a budget for that to do the conference, and it would be a day-long conference. We'd have experts come in to talk about restorative justice. We had different panels happening, and so, as I said, the schools have, some of them have adopted restorative justice practices. One of our commissioners sits on, is a teacher at one of the schools, so that she's always, and we also have, because of her, she runs their local Amnesty International group. We have 3 student ambassadors that's come to our commission meetings, and they also do a lot of outreach on human rights.
These are like high school students.
They're high school students, and they're really dynamic.
That's a very interesting idea. Yeah. Well, I think we started to get a couple of questions here from folks hither and yon. So perhaps we should begin to turn to that.
May I just turn and ask the answer the healthcare issue?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah, well, why don't you read it and then answer it? And maybe I can ask our tech people to sort of put us back on gallery view so that we can all participate in the discussion at this point.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you very much. There's Montanette and there's Julia. Very good. Okay, this is great. I think we're setting up a really interesting discussion. But go ahead, JoAnne. Why don't you take that one on?
JoAnne, thank you very much for your question, because it's an area that I know that we have been dealing with here. And the question is there any work done by the Human Rights Commission in the healthcare space regarding healthcare disparities? And what we found was, because the hospitals, because they want to, because they're profit driven, actually removed their mental health facilities from Kingston and moved them over to Poughkeepsie, which is, if you're taking public transportation, it's an hour and a half. It could take up to an hour and a half to get there. And so we have been advocating to bring back mental health facilities back here, because especially during the time of COVID, people are having a lot of mental anxieties, and they're manifesting in many different ways. So we've been advocating that way. So from mental health facilities.
Well, that's very interesting. Montanette, would you all deal with those questions in any particular way, that with regard to healthcare disparities and access?
So what would happen is our commissioners would shine a light on this particular issue. We would have conversation about these healthcare disparities, and that usually drives further conversation conversations that usually bring about change. But in terms of someone making, calls to different hospitals or medical care facilities, commissioners could possibly decide to take up that type of work, but mainly what we would do is hold a public hearing or public session about this matter, get it out into the community, and usually the healthcare stakeholders would be the ones listening and would most undoubtedly begin bringing about change or making some change.
Now, this is an interesting question, Julia, because it's not an individual complaint, right? It's not me saying I've been discriminated against. They wouldn't, give me emergency services or anything of that kind. But it's a more general argument about maybe you're discriminating against my group or my neighborhood, right? With regard to a particular service. Is that something that the state division can deal with? I'm sorry, we don't have you. There we go.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I needed to do that or if the technicians would do it. There are a couple levels for that. Yes, as you indicated, if there are individual complaints of discrimination based on any of the protected categories, they could come to us and we would investigate those. Sometimes we get groups of complaints, several people filing against the same entity, and we handle those then as a group, and we look at patterns and practices. We don't look at any complaint in isolation. Comparative data and overall patterns and practices are very important. We also have a unit called the Division Initiated Complaints Unit, or Division.
What's that first word? The what initiated?
Division. In other words, Division of Human Rights.
So in other words, you can initiate the complaint.
Well, we don't do that at the regional level, but I can make referrals to this unit where I can say, this is some of what we're seeing. This is some of what we're becoming aware of. This may be something you would want to look into on a division initiated basis.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. As we get into this, and see the very interesting differences in the way this is approached between Ulster and Onondaga County, which is very, very interesting to us as we think about putting something together here. It occurs to me that there are legal issues here that are fairly complex, that, what is the extent of the authority and how do you go about dealing with things? Do you all have let me start with you, JoAnne, a legal advice that you can take? Is someone on the commission sort of tasked with doing that?
Okay, well, we had one of our commissioners had been a lawyer, actually two of them. In fact, one of them is now the county public defender. But we have actually have access to the law department for the county. If we have,
you can go to
that
them.
type of question. So for instance, when we were revising our enabling legislation, we were working with the county attorneys and the county legislature attorneys to make sure that we were coterminous with all the different laws that we need to be.
Right, because you operate under county law. And of course, Montanette, you're
County
right.
and state law, so.
State law, I see, yes.
Yeah.
And Montanette, you're in the county government, so you can seek legal advice in that way.
So for community members who need legal advice, we do not have any attorneys on staff in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We don't have any attorney. Well, actually, we have an attorney who's a commissioner, Lynessa Chaplin. She's just well known with the I-81 project that's taking place here in Syracuse. But no one has been given the authority to provide any type of legal advice to anyone. But we do have the county law department, the Onondaga County Law Department, that we can reach out to when the commissioners or this office needs some type of guidance in terms of what we can do, what we should do, and what we can't do. We also look to the law department with any type of enabling legislation questions. If there were any changes that needed to take place, that would be the county law department and county legislators. But we are not an entity that has the authority to give any type of legal advice to anyone. And we make that very clear to the community members.
Right. That is like, yeah, and I was thinking more of the way in which you sort of your status as an officer, what you can and can't do. And there you have access to the county attorney.
Absolutely, we do. We have a county attorney who works with us whenever we have questions. And if we ever aren't sure about the enabling legislation, or if there's something that's undefined or not fully defined within that legislation, we can go to our county attorney who's designated for the Human Rights Commission and ask questions to get guidance and direction.
I see. So Julia, I guess what the long and short of it is that the state division doesn't really exercise a great deal of supervision or oversight over the local commissions.
That's correct.
Yeah, you're not really keeping track of them. They don't report to you. You will hear from them if they file a complaint, or if they're going to forward a complaint to you.
Well, yes, there's other interactions also. We, in our external relations unit, has been meeting regularly with representatives of local commissions, trying to make sure that we have an ongoing relationship, that we give each other feedback, that we maintain contact and so on. And in fact, I recently presented at one of those meetings to talk about interviewing techniques for those commissions that do their own internal investigations or even interviewing. I gave a presentation on that to try to be of service. So there is a relationship, certainly, and we try to maintain that relationship. But they don't, the local commissions do not report to us. We're not their bosses. They have their own structure, as we've heard today.
So in this division, and where we're sitting, you and I, which commissions actually do their own investigations? Tompkins County, is that the one that they do that?
Yeah, Tompkins County is not in my region. I'm not cognizant of what I know they did at one time. Whether or not they still do, I'm not sure.
I heard about it also once.
And in the Rochester, Syracuse region, we haven't had local commissions doing their own investigations.
I see.
I think probably since around 19, when would it have been, since about 1980.
Really? Okay, so that's not the MO.
Right.
What if I could ask JoAnne and Montanette, sort of throw you a bit of a curveball and ask you what you'd really like to be able to do that you're not doing now, that you think would sort of make it a more prominent and effective agency in terms of the goals of the organization? Where would you like to expand or intensify your effort? Maybe I can start with you, Montanette, on that. Is there any particular way in which you'd like to sort of do more or have additional authority?
I would love to do more public hearings. It's always tough to get all of the actors involved with the public hearings, but there's so much happening in our community that I wish we could put a microphone to every issue so that we could hear from community members, stakeholders in the community, and just really get some good conversation going about what's happening in the community. We do it. I mean, we do it maybe twice a year, but it would be nice if we could do it a little bit more often. We have an extremely diverse commission, and I wish I could say I wish I could say that, oh, we need more diversity, but we've got the most diverse commission ever. So we're blessed in that aspect. So the only thing that I would love to see us expand upon would be just more public hearings, getting into the communities and having the community people, putting that microphone to the folks who live day to day some of these issues that we're talking about. And I think that's what's most important, hearing from the folks that are those statistics, so to speak, really putting a face and a name to the people who are often part of some of these issues. That's my heartbeat for our commission.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very good. Yeah. JoAnne, what do you think?
Well, our wish list is to have basically an independent website. Our website is part of the county's website, and we don't have control over it. Because what I would like to be able to do is anytime there's an issue out there, is to do like a little blurb or a press release on, for instance, we're getting refugees right now from Ukraine, coming in. I'd like to mention, be able to, do outreach for that, and also maybe do some education, because we really didn't do the same thing for the Syrian,
Mhm.
right? And so we need to do education and, get people, their awareness up. So that would be my, my number one. Number two, I would like to have, like right now, we don't have a full commission, and partly that's because the minority leader hasn't appointed anyone, and it might be seen as human rights are seen as a partisan issue when they shouldn't. They should be nonpartisan.
Right.
So
Again,
we
yeah.
need to do some education there.
And the way the commissioners are appointed is completely local and independent, right? That's determined at the
Yeah,
county.
so it's determined. So the county executive gets 5 appointees, and then the majority leader gets 3 appointees, and the minority leader of the legislature gets 3 appointees.
Now, Montanette, how did you recruit such a terrific, diverse group of people to be on your commission? Oh, sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Our chief diversity officer is embedded in the community. She knows lots of people. The people in this office are in the community. I think, when this office was created, the folks who became part of this office were just already in the community doing the work. We knew people. We were locking arms with other community leaders. And so we would reach out to them and ask them, are you willing to do this? Would you be willing to do this? And they were more than happy to. We still are waiting for about 4 members to join us. And one of the individuals is a mental health person. She has a mental health background. We have a young person who is actually a high school student. So we're just trying to make sure that we are drawing in the people the commissioners who look like people in our community. We want the commissioners to reflect Onondaga County. So a lot of it was everyone in this office. We were in the community, and so we knew people, and so we would reach out to them and say, hey, Lanessa Chaplin, are you willing to join us? Alameen Muhammad, are you willing to join us? We've got Rashida Caldwell. She's actually an at-large Syracuse Common Counselor, but she is the founder of Let Me Be Great, the Let Me Be Great Foundation. She's a commissioner. She's actually a chairperson. So we just kind of connected with the folks that we knew in the community and asked them to join us, and they were just more than happy.
That's very interesting. How did they get you, JoAnne?
So I'm an appointee by and I got reappointed by the county exec office, and I think I got appointed from 3 areas. One, I was one of the founding members of the Hudson Valley LGBTQ Community Center. We're the first major rural community center for LGBTQ people.
Yeah.
My work at Marist, I teach human rights and those types of issues. And also I was on the Democratic City Committee.
Okay.
So I think that those 3, so the county executive knew who I was. I was sort of in his face.
Yeah, people who have a profile in the community. That's what Montanette was saying, right? So people who are active in certain areas.
Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to add, so I mean, there's still that process of filling out an application, presenting your resume, and then also the legislators approving your appointment. But we knew that a lot of the folks who wanted to be part of this commission, they're already out in the community doing the work. And, they were the kind of people, you like to have serve on your commission because they're already doing the work. You just, what you do is you join up with them, you link up with them and offer your support and your help.
Yeah, I'm sure, like me, everyone who's listening to this this afternoon is inspired by the stories that you all have told us, and what the state is able to do, and the sort of the wonderful human rights laws that we have available to us, and which is not everywhere in the United States, and sort of this kind of wellspring of local action that results in these community based commissions. And I think that's where we're at that point now in Oneida County, where I think we're ready to jump up to get something going. And you've given us so much to think about, and the variety of things that you do is wonderful. So I want to thank you, Julia, for spending the time and the work that you do at the state, and Montanette and JoAnne, thank you very, very much. We'll be back to all three of you as we go forward. Yes, Julia, please.
It's my pleasure to be here today. And one thing I didn't mention, and that is, the commissioners, at least the heads of the commissions, and some of the commissioners know me. They know they can contact me when they have questions, need some of how we would look at a certain situation. I've often presented to the commissioner groups, and we certainly would be available to do exactly that for Oneida County if you start a commission.
That's wonderful. We will take you up on that. And I know Montanette and JoAnne have been resources to us up till now, and so we'll continue to draw on you. But thank you all
Absolutely.
very much.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening. Much appreciated.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Okay, bye
Nice
now.
meeting you all.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, bye.